What's up guys, this is Dax, and in this video I wanted to break down for you guys how to improve your black and gray shading. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some general tips and some things you might want to look at as far as what you're doing. Alright, so how to improve your black and gray shading. It comes down to a bunch of factors. Okay, number one, just remember all skin is different. So you have to treat all skin different. Are you treating the skin differently? Or are you running on the same machine with the same volts, with the same length of the needle and the same needle and treating it like somebody else's skin? Because if you are, that might be one of your issues. You want to treat every skin differently, and every tattoo, there is kind of a learning curve that you have to go through to understand how the needle's going in the skin. Sometimes skin's rougher, sometimes it's looser, sometimes it's softer, sometimes it's thicker, sometimes it's tighter, sometimes it's whatever. You get the idea. Like, all skin is different. So you can't treat it like you did the last person's skin, and you'll never know how it is until you actually start the tattoo. Okay, so you might start a tattoo and it's not completely smooth as far as the shading, but eventually get smoother because you get to know the skin. Okay, that's totally normal. And the quicker you learn how it's going in the skin, the better. That way the entire tattoo comes out smooth. But there's a couple things that I look at, like how am I looking at the skin? My book actually goes into a ton about, you know, the different types of skin. If you're interested in that, check it out. There's a link below. But also, am I using a rotary? If so, am I tightening the skin, or am I letting it, am I making the skin looser? If you make the skin looser and you're using a rotary, it hits the skin softer. So it's going to create a softer shade. So if you're using a rotary, that's one thing that a lot of people with coils get stuck into, is tightening the skin because their machine bogs down. But with a rotary, the machine doesn't bog down, so you don't want to hold the skin so tight. That makes sense. So if you're using a rotary, that might be one thing to look at. Another thing would be, what kind of needles are you using? Are you using quality needles, or are you using standard needles? Are you using bug pin, curved, soft edge magnums, or are you using regular needles? Okay, the type of needle you use, and a lot of people say they're too expensive, but the little Cheyenne cartridges will improve the smoothness in your shading, hands down. Okay, use Cheyenne cartridges. They're what I use, and they're the best. Okay, hands down. I've seen other cartridges that say they claim to be better. They're always been shit. They always break down. They're always cheaper needles or whatever. There's a reason why Cheyenne costs a lot. It's because you can rely on them. So what kind of needles are you using? Check those out. If you're not using curved, bug pin, magnum needles from Cheyenne, try using those. Another thing is, what type of machines are you using? Check those out. If you're using a cheap machine, you'll always get cheap shading. If you're using a great machine and you can see people doing great work with it, chances are you can too. You just got to make that connect. What kind of gray wash are you using? Are you still doing the old school shit where you're mixing your own gray washes in order to save money? Or do you have a pre-mixed gray wash and you can develop consistent habits on what you're using? Because if you have to mix your gray wash, that's hard to develop good habits on, because your gray wash can always change and it's not as consistent as a pre-mixed gray wash. So I would recommend you get a pre-mixed gray wash. Also, the 2-drop technique that I invented, check that out. It's on tattooingportraitsblog.com. It's actually below here. Just search for the article, how I improved my gray wash or my shading using the 2-drop technique. Or just Google 2-drop technique. Basically, you put 2 drops of white in every cap, and you got to use a certain cap. You got to mix it a certain way in order to get the full effect of this. But it'll help smoothen your shading. It'll help you understand your gray wash and what tone comes out of your gray wash, and it will help you reduce the redness of the skin while you're tattooing. So 2-drop technique, if you don't know what that is, check it out. The link's below. So another way to shade smoother is obviously the angle. Okay, I've noticed the more I aim this way, the harder it is to shade smooth, but the more I tilt it like this, the easier it grazes the skin, so it makes it a softer shade. Also, the motions you use. I can't say there's a one-size-fits-all motion, but there's different motions that create different shades, and you want to test out yours because everybody's is different. So that's another thing. What is another way to improve the shading? Okay, the volts you're using. A lot of people run their machine either too low or too high. And this is something that it depends on your speed of motion as well. So I would constantly try new things out, test new things out with your power supply and how fast the volts are coming. Also, how far are you hanging your needle out of the grip? Because that has a lot to do with it too. I noticed that it's easier to shade smoother and lighter when your needle hangs out less, okay? So try that out too. Also, the way you're going, I know with whip shading, if you're shading like this, it's gonna be harder to shade smoother rather than like this, and you're pulling. Pushing rather than pulling. When you're pulling, it causes less trauma to the skin. It's easier to provide a smoother shade. So here, these are the best tips that I got, like right off the bat for this week. So make sure you check out, I hope you find some value in this. Make sure you check out what you're doing and see if it's congruent, and try some of the things I'm giving you. And if there's anything else you think that I should add on how to improve the shade, black and gray shading, comment that stuff below. And also share this with somebody who might be struggling with this issue. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure to check out my new book. Also, my training course is popping off. If you're looking to learn how to tattoo portraits, sometimes we're enrolling, sometimes we have closed enrollment and we're focused on our students. But check the links below. Subscribe to my newsletter at tattooingportraits.com and follow me on social media. Also, stay tuned for next week because we got a really great topic for next week. I'll see you then. See ya.